What are your best examples of people cheating the system? So, I work in the luggage claim department for a major airline. All day, I get to hear customers yelling and complaining. What I did was borrow one of the wheelchairs from the airport and sit behind my desk all day. Customers come in all angry, see me in the wheelchair, realize they are about to yell at a guy who is possibly crippled, and all of a sudden they turn into the nicest people. Physically, my BP has dropped, and in general, I'm in a pretty good mood most of the time. And just to give some context right out the bat, people are looking for something wrong with the airline, so the first excuse to yell at someone and try to get something for free is that they will do it. I do notice it's mostly the baby boomer generation that does the most yelling and complaining, simply because they are the ones who were used to the golden age of flying where the traveler was treated like gold, and unfortunately, that's just not the case today anymore. Wow, that's a pretty good idea. And this is how you do things right, with the help of psychology to make things a little bit more pleasant. Story 2. When I was in college, I had this meal plan where the school essentially took my actual money and turned it into campus dollars that could only be spent at school dining halls and cafes. I didn't mind so much until the end of the semester when I was informed that any unspent campus dollars would just simply, quote unquote, go away. I had more than $100 left and only a day to spend them, so here's what I did. I went to the nicest campus restaurant, the one where you're supposed to take your parents when they come to visit, and basically a real restaurant with waitstaff that also happened to take campus dollars. I got the most expensive thing on the menu and then called the waiter over. I asked him if I could tip him in campus dollars, and he said yes. I then asked him if he would also have immediate access to those campus dollars in the form of actual money, and he said yes too. So I made him a deal. I gave him a monster tip and he gave me half of it back in actual money. Many years later, I'm still pretty proud of this. I made a server's day, screwed the man, and got my money back. Story 3. I used to work in a camera store that sold warranties, and no matter how the camera broke, they would fix it or replace it under the warranty. The only problem was that the store would ship off the camera to be repaired, sometimes for months, up to 5 times before replacing it. So let's say your battery cover breaks off. You ship it off and 6 weeks later it's back, but it's really a brand defect, so the cover pops off again. They won't replace the whole piece or give you another camera. You've been out of the camera for months while it's being fixed, and they keep selling the defective camera and the warranties. I got tired of doing that crap to customers, and I thought it was dishonest. I read the contract myself and found an interesting clause. If the camera was so physically damaged that it was obvious it couldn't be fixed, we could take a picture of it and then send that instead. And the person immediately just got a new camera. So when people would come in with a camera with a defect I'd seen 100 times, I'd ask if they just wanted a new one, the next model up, without the defect. They'd say yes, and I'd tell them to take it out into the parking lot and run over it with their car. I'd pile the pieces on the counter, take a picture, and give them their new non-defective camera. Also, my boss will often check the date modified on certain files on our server to see if I have updated or even opened a certain file recently. So I've also installed a changer utility that allows me to modify the date modified type on any file. This comes in handy when my boss wants to give me weekend assignments. I just come in on Monday morning and change the date modify to Saturday night, and he thinks I was actually doing something for work on Saturday night. I've actually received a lot of kudos for this. I don't feel bad about it though, because my boss is a huge pain, so he deserves to be duped once in a while. I sleep fine. Now this, cheating the system, is like a boss. Story 4. I'm from Northern Ireland, and when ordering stuff online, I'd always write Belfast, Ireland on it instead of NI. The post still gets there, as yes, technically Belfast is in Ireland. The post would be directed via the Dublin sorting office instead of coming into the UK. 9 times out of 10, the Dublin sorting office would just send it on up to Belfast instead of forwarding it to Royal Mail in London, who would then slap a huge import bill on it, whereas the Southern Irish Postal Service can't charge me import as I am a UK citizen. The Republic of Ireland doesn't care if the Queen's out of the pocket over a few quids. My granddad was a Royal Mail postman for years. He taught me that one. Just to clarify, if you live in Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK, you have to pay UK import tax on stuff you buy from outside the EU. But if you write Ireland as your address instead of NI, the parcel will be sent to the Republic of Ireland, a different country but same island, which usually forwards it straight to you instead of sending it back to the UK so you can be charged. It's a sneaky way of avoiding import tax. Story 5. Back in high school, I discovered that if you called any quote unquote questions or comments number on any food product, you could make up literally anything and get a coupon for whatever it was. So, for instance, we'd call Bisquick pancake mix and say we bought a jar of mix, but inside we found 3 already made pancakes, or anything like that, just nonsensical stuff. We did it so much that we'd pile up the coupons, go to the grocery store, check out a full cart of groceries, and just hand the cashier a stack of these coupons and not pay a cent for hundreds of dollars worth of groceries. We did that multiple times, and eventually the big companies like Kraft and General Mills, etc., did catch on, and now you have to use different names and addresses. But I'll never forget the exasperation of the poor person on the other end of the line when I told them that the chicken patties I just bought just got more frozen every time I put them in the microwave. The kids are outside playing hockey with the friggin' thing right now. This is unacceptable. Story 6. I have 2. First, an old lady, probably in her 80s, came into my college bookstore, walked in the back with a bag, placed 2 books in her bag, and then I watched her walk to the front as she sold them back to the bookstore. I wanted to say something, but I was just too impressed. If you're a woman over 55, you are invisible. You are non-threatening, unassuming, and trustworthy. You are grandma, so you can get away with things you wouldn't believe. Second, in the good old days of Black Friday, before stores like Best Buy started getting very crafty and clandestine with their deals about 8+ years ago, there used to be a slight buffer where someone would leak the sales and the items wouldn't be removed from the shelves. I don't remember specifically, but they had a system to prevent you from purchasing and then price matching retroactively. And as soon as this happened, I strolled on down to Best Buy, took a bunch of stuff that I wanted, and put it in their dryers and washing machines. Basically, whatever hiding place that didn't look like it got a lot of browsing or consideration. Then, when Black Friday comes, sleep in, head to the store around noon, and pull the doorbusters out of a washing machine. Technically, that's not illegal, so props to this dude. Story 7. When I was young, I found a website that parents could set up as a reward system for children doing chores. The parent would set up an account listing several chores and assign them point values. The child, after completing these chores, could then use the points to buy various items offered on the website. There was somehow no charge for any of the stuff. So I created 2 email accounts and 2 passwords on the site and set up a really generous reward system where I got tons of points for doing imaginary chores. I used this to quote-unquote buy tons of Pokemon cards that I then played with my grandpa because I didn't actually have any friends. If anyone remembers anything about this website, I actually tried to find it again years later and I couldn't, probably due to the terrible, unsustainable business model. Story 8. A friend of mine born in Cape Town immigrated to the USA at around 2 years old. African Americans on all standardized testing and college applications, white as the Yeti. It's a typical one, but still gold. For non-Americans in the USA, many colleges or loans and grants give added weight to people of minority status, intended to make up for institutional racism in a process called affirmative action. She is white, but she claimed minority status through a technicality and is recorded as such on the census, opening doors intended for visible minorities to her that would otherwise not be open. Ironically, she is considered a minority in South Africa. So these people are not messing around when they share their stories about cheating the system. Some of the ideas here are pretty gold and totally usable. If you want to learn more cool ideas and hacks, simply hop onto my channel, subscribe, and like this video while you're at it. It really helps us out. Thanks for watching, and let's go ahead and get to the next story. Story 9. A teacher I had in high school always said to his students, if you can get away with cheating, go for it. And it turns out he had gotten a raise for getting his master's degree, but never actually got the degree. And this went on for over 10 years before the school system figured it out. Somehow, he got hired at a new school too. He actually started taking classes at a legit college but never finished, and he told the school that he did. And for some reason, they never checked and just gave him the pay increase. He didn't even get in trouble for it since the school district was so embarrassed that they just gave him severance pay and everything. Now, currently, I work in a typical office building, but today I saw something interesting. Lazy coworker number 11 has been leaving around lunchtime to go to the gym, except I had to get something out of my car and I saw her in her workout clothes eating out of a tub of fried chicken. I didn't say anything, but she walked back and 15 minutes later saying how sore she would be tomorrow. She works out every day. Now, my boss has a policy that if you're going to work out, you don't have to clock out, which means lazy coworker number 11 essentially gets paid to eat fried chicken in a jogging suit in her minivan. As annoyed as I am, I'm also slightly impressed that she thought of this. Story 10. If you want to cancel your cell phone contract without paying a fee, pull up the provider's service map. Find a huge hole in the map, like a desert out west. Look for a town name on the map. Then tell them you're moving to Putzawachatakika, Arizona, and you want to cancel because they don't provide service there, and boom, you're free. 3 times now. 3 times. I've done it with AT&T 2 times and Verizon the other. The last time was at AT&T in 2011. Here's another bonus cheat. If you get a ticket in DC from an automatic traffic camera, wait 3 or 4 months, then write a letter saying, I called on A, B, C, X, Y, Z, and I wrote letters on Q, R, S, and I just never received a response. If I am, 1, not contacted regarding this erroneous ticket this week, or 2, the ticket is not dismissed this week, I will be filing charges at X courthouse. FYI, there aren't really any charges you can press, but the ticketing is run by a for-profit company, and their job is to ignore complaints unless it looks like you are going to cause trouble. I've had like 10 plus tickets dismissed this way over the past 5 years. I guess this dude is the reason why cell companies now ask for proof. Story 11. This may not be as much about beating the system as it is about being persistent enough to get what I have worked for. A professor at my second college refused to grant me the work credits I'd earned at my previous school. She was supposed to, but because she was a bigwig of sorts, no one challenged her on my behalf. My diploma was withheld on graduation day. Secretary smugly told me the dean was too busy to speak with me and that I was out of luck. Now, I knew he was always on the office phone attached to the fax, so I took advantage of that. I went home, found all my original papers, 70 or 80-ish, and the moment his line went free, I began faxing the papers. One after the other, a never-ending stream of documents. After sending the 40th or so paper, my mom's phone rang. I picked it up and the secretary was almost in panic. She said, I was tying up the line. The dean approved my papers and he said, can you just please stop and come get your diploma? Which I did on my graduation day. Story 12. My university used to have a debit card system for vending machines on campus. Your university ID would act as your debit card and you could swipe it at vending machines to buy snacks. My friends and I found out that the system could be gamed. If you only had $1.50 in your account, also the price of a 20-ounce soda, you could swipe your ID at multiple vending machines that were right next to each other, select multiple drinks or food from the machines, and you'd still only get charged $1.50. The glitch was that the account balance could never be a negative number, so if you got charged $1.50 5 times at the same time and you only had $1.50 in the account, your account would just end up with a $0 balance. Oh, and we just bought a laptop and the 2-year warranty was over $200, which I thought was insane. And the salesman said, yes, well, it covers a complete replacement even if it is your fault. And then I said, well, shouldn't I just break it in under 2 years and bring it back for a new one? He then said, well, that's what I do. Take a big glass of Coke and pour it over the keyboard while your computer is on, making sure you fry the motherboard. Otherwise, they'll just replace parts, and this way, you'll just get a whole new laptop. Story 13. When I was young, I worked at a McDonald's where the beverages were self-serve, so we just sold you the cup. Once on a particularly slow day, when I was the only one at the registers, an older man walked in with an empty gallon of milk carton, walked over to the Coke dispenser, and started to fill it. It took a full minute or two, and he actually looked over at me once where I was watching him utterly fascinated. When he was done, he put the little cap back on, nodded to me, and then walked back out to his car. Another one was when I quit a job over a decade ago. My boss forgot to submit my termination form. I kept getting paid for over 3 months, and I was a manager, making pretty good coin too. I knew they'd eventually catch it, and I thought they'd ask for the money back, so I banked every check and didn't spend a cent. So the paychecks eventually stopped after about 3 or more months, and I waited for the call or letter asking for the money back. It just never came. 2 years later, I used the money to buy my hot tub thanks to my incompetent ex-boss. Props to this guy for saving the money for as long as he did until finally splurging on that hot tub. A lot of us would have probably spent that money right away. Story 14. My girlfriend runs a salon and one of her employees, well, let's call her Casey, has a kid with a deadbeat guy. Casey and her male friend are substance dependents, very irresponsible parents, and for all purposes, bottom feeders. The baby is now just over 12 months old and has been diagnosed with cancer. Casey tells my girlfriend she can no longer work because she wants time at home with her son, whom she had never cared about before. A week later, Casey revisited the salon and bragged about how the state of Ohio is paying her son's medical bills, and she doesn't have to pay a dime. Cool deal, I guess. The plot thickens though. She has the guts to ask my girlfriend in the same conversation to have a fundraiser for her child's medical bills because Casey cannot afford them. My girlfriend is completely blown away by this, especially considering Casey just quit her job. She politely declines and Casey leaves. A few days later, Casey's on the local news with her deadbeat boyfriend, sobbing about how she can't pay the medical bills and cannot find work. She asks people to donate to an account at a local bank. The money is rolling in at this point. Casey appears later at the salon to get a full-service cut and color, nails, and show off the new clothes she just purchased, etc. And before we know it, her son and her crying mug are all over Facebook and the news. Car washes are being held, spaghetti dinners, donation bins at local businesses, you name it, all to pay for medical bills already being paid by the state of Ohio. A few months pass by, and so does a child, very sad. The day after the funeral, Casey posts on Facebook pictures of her out partying it up at a local club, and soon after there is a benefit dinner being held for Casey to pay for funeral expenses, and she wants to start a charity for cancer research. Now, this is a short version of the story, but it is messed up nonetheless. I've urged my girlfriend to report this to someone, but she hasn't out of fear of retaliation. It's too bad that people play on others' feelings and take advantage of the system like this. Story 15. When I was in college, there was a pay-by-the-hour parking lot right next to the College of Business, an accounting major. The university charged $1 an hour to use the parking lot, or you could park 2 miles away, wait for a bus, and then ride it out to and from campus. Being the savvy business student that I was, every year at the beginning of the fall semester, I would park in the parking lot, buy a ticket, and then run home and enter it into a spreadsheet. I'd record the first day of classes as day 1 in the first field and then enter the ticket number that I had received that day in a separate field. Needless to say, after 3 weeks, I would have a strong enough amount of data to plot a line of best fit using simple algebra that I had learned in college and be able to predict a ticket number for any given day. I'd then scan a ticket into my school laptop and use Photoshop to edit the date, time, and ticket number. I printed that out, stuck it in my window, and cashed in on free parking. Sure, it was a little bit dangerous, but it saved me a ton of time and money. Plus, my argument, if I ever was caught, was to explain that I used those skills that the university had taught me in my courses to take advantage of a flawed system. My ethics teacher would have been pissed, but I know my management and economics professors would have been proud. Story 16. I got a negative removed from my credit report. Once you have a negative on your report, it stays on for 7 years. There are exceptions, though. I wrote a letter to all 3 agencies telling them that the negative is a mistake and that by law they must investigate it and provide proof of their investigation within 30 days. You can send these letters every 30 days as well, and they must investigate them each time. The agencies don't have the resources to investigate each claim, so they often just remove it. When I wrote my letters, the first 2 agencies removed the negative the first time. The other agency did the investigation and responded by saying that it was accurate. I sent the same letter a month later, and they dropped it by that time. You should just use old-fashioned snail mail, as it is more difficult to process that way. It worked like a charm, and now I have a perfect credit history. Story 17. This is what I did when I was thinking about leasing a new car. I wanted a BMW 3 Series, but it was more per month than a Mercedes C-Class, so I went to Mercedes first and got them to give me a quote on paper with the monthly payment on it. Then I went over to BMW and got their quote, which was significantly higher for a comparable car. I then waited for BMW to call me up and try to get me to come in and buy the car, and I told them Mercedes could give me a C-Class for about $40 a month or less. The BMW dude then offered me the same car that I had gotten a quote on earlier for something like $60 a month less than they quoted me before. I didn't end up buying the car, but I reduced my potential payment for the exact car I wanted from $420 a month to around $360. I'm definitely going to do it again when I'm looking to lease a new car in the future. Story 18. So I have a kind of complicated cheating system. On my iPhone, there's a particular app that awards M points whenever you do certain things in the app. The first time you open it each day, when you watch one of the new stories, that kind of thing. Well, those M points you could trade in later for like tons of things, including Amazon gift cards. 5,000 M points was about a $5 Amazon gift card. Watching a 10-minute video was worth, in the beginning, about 300 M points. Now, the trick was that you could drag the bar to the end of the video and it would still trigger the M points. You could make about $5 a minute the first day they opened it. So my buddy and I stayed up super late that night and made several $100s in Amazon gift cards that night, which were just a coupon code you attached to your Amazon account. The next morning, they reduced the value from 300 to something like 100 points. It was still worth it in that you could make about one-third of the essentially free money. The final blow was when they reduced the amount to something like 10 points, then it just became too much. In the end, after about a week, we bought 2 high-end gaming computers, parts then assembled from nearly scratch. We already had a tower and power supply for one, but the other was completely built for free, courtesy of this app. It was incredible. Alright, I hope you enjoyed the stories in this video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you're also going to enjoy what unethical life hack can you share. Story 5 might just work for you, so check it out in that video, and thank you for watching this one.